Well, hello everyone. This is a bit of a different style video because generally most of my openings are quite formal. And that's just generally because I tend to be doing much more formal content in regards to the interviews with different people in youth political parties and whatnot. But this is just sort of kind of a sum up video, or almost a recap of how the series has gone. I also decided to take a couple of your questions as well on Instagram, on both my personal account and my channel account, which is Media.wmv on Instagram, so go and follow it. There'll be a link down below. First of all, oh god, I'm saying a lot already. This is usually something that gets edited out heavily, and I'm not sure if I will be doing it this time, but I'm gonna just run through a few things first, and then I'll get on to the conclusion about what's up next for the channel, because I'm pretty sure the people who are watching this video are probably most looking forward to what's planned next for the series, given we've interviewed every major party in both jurisdictions of the island of Ireland, which is crazy to think about, really. It's not something I'd ever envisaged when we first began. The idea for the Youth and Politics podcast was only meant to revolve around the college branches on my college campus, which was in TCU, and at the time there was Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, the Greens. Oh no, the Greens weren't there. No, sorry, I'm already messing up. Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, Labour, the Social Democrats, People for Profit, and Sinn Féin. And at the time, I had approached a few people who I knew in these different parties, and I kind of asked, hey, would you like to do this? And it was more just sort of a sense of, well, I want to sit down and interview them first of all, because I thought they were kind of, they're grand enough people, very much, some of them, at least the majority of them I would consider quite good friends, and I think everyone I've done an interview with I would at least be able to say I'm friendly and kind with. I don't think there's anyone who hates my guts who's done an interview with me yet, thankfully. So originally I had gotten 5 of those parties, and it was everyone bar Sinn Féin. Now, the person I had originally wanted to interview wasn't comfortable putting themselves online, and I totally respect that, because it's a very big commitment to, first of all, put your face on the internet where it's going to be forever, and then second of all, put it on the internet while discussing politics, which is very much not something anyone ever wants to be tied down to, and there's a lot of good reason as to why that is. I'm not sure if I'm rambling here, but it's just a bit of backstory, and it very much started as a very small project. Myself and Leona, Brady, who has been fantastic throughout, and I'll get on to her again later because she has been 100% the second person running this show, and it's very easy for, a lot of the message I've gotten have been to me personally saying how much people have enjoyed the podcast and how much they've gotten out of it, and those are all really nice sentiments, and I love it. But it is important to remember that it's not a one-man show. It's actually a man and a woman show, but it's very much a team effort between me and her, and she does so much of the brilliant work when it comes to doing the live episodes. So providing an extra camera, because I am not rich and I cannot afford 2 DSLRs. The one I even have is a very low budget DSLR, and I'm very happy with how it works out, but she is fantastic with setting up audio recording, setting up positions for cameras, getting all that, and that's why those first 5 episodes look really professional. So let's then just move on a little bit. I hope I'm not boring people. I always tend to have this idea that if I keep rambling on enough, I kind of get off point, but I feel like this is stuff people might be interested in knowing about how the whole series came to be, and hopefully it's something that maybe I look back in a few years and I'll be like, oh, I remember doing that. Hopefully I'll still be doing stuff like that, but who knows. What happened then afterwards was, of course, I did all those interviews in around January and February time, the in-person ones for the first 5 that I released over the period of, I think, a week and a half during lockdown, when I had just come back from, I was in Belgium just before lockdown hit, the first lockdown in Ireland hit, and obviously with everyone as well, I kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, I very much, didn't really know what to do with myself at the time, because you're kind of sitting at home and the whole aspect of not being able to see anyone hadn't fully sunk in yet. You're kind of treating it like any other week. At least for me, I'm not a very going out all the time sort of person, so sitting in my room and editing videos and doing college work was kind of my norm, if that makes sense. not to say I'm a complete anti-social heathen. I do talk to people. But it was a while, and I think I almost, in a sense, I kind of wanted to do interviews to begin with, because I was very bad at getting committed to doing videos and very bad at committed to editing videos. So the idea of having someone else take their time out and do an interview with me was almost a push in a sense to get it edited and get it finished and put it out there, because obviously if someone else is involved in it, you know, you need to get it out there. If it's just yourself talking to a camera, you can say, oh, I'll put that off, I'll do it later. But if someone else is involved, they kind of want to be like, well, I took time out my day, where's the finished product? So yeah, that was the main reason. And then over one of the weeks in lockdown, I just went at it and I edited the 5 videos that I had done at the time, which was the Soc Dems, PvP, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Labour. And they all came out and I got great response. First of all, to the Soc Dems one, which is still my most viewed video on my channel. I think it's nearly at 500 views, which is mind-boggling to me. Even knowing that that's not a large amount of views on a YouTube scale. Like, small view numbers in comparison to the majority of people on YouTube would be around the 100,000s. Like, but 500 to me is mad, considering that 500 people, or even, it's got 500 views, not people, won't get into semantics, but we'll say at most around 300 people have sat down and watched at least a minute of it. I think I didn't check the average watch time of it, but people have sat down and watched it, taken time out, and I think that's absolutely mind-boggling. After that then, I thought to myself, well, I'm sitting here at home. Zoom is kind of the go-to thing at the moment, and everyone has it, which is kind of a blessing in disguise, really. Anna has a perfectly brilliant record feature. So what I decided to do was I said, well, you know what, I'll reach out, because at the time I had wanted to do an interview with someone from Sinn Féin, because I hadn't gotten someone from my college, so I was like, it'd look bad if I only interview the 2 big boys, being Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and obviously they're the 2 big boys if you disinclude Sinn Féin, and that's something I didn't want to do. So I was like, I better reach out, and thankfully enough I got a really big response, and it was important at the time coming up to it, and I had wanted to interview someone. Then if I was putting out the call, I might as well try and see if there's anyone from the Greens, anyone from Main 2, and at that time I was still playing around with it, and I wanted to see, should I interview people outside of the big parties? So like, who's an example who doesn't get elected? What parties don't? Well, I suppose the only examples that come to mind are the absolute mad parties like the Exit Party and the National Party and whatnot. And then I kind of thought to myself, like, if you're interviewing fringe parties that really don't have that much of a say in electoral politics and aren't really making any core decisions, you're going to go down this mad rabbit hole, and that is an interesting topic that could be covered at a different later point. But the main thing I wanted to do was to interview all the parties that have an elected seat in the Dáil, and I've done that now, thankfully. I had left out originally the Socialist Party and Rise, and oh my god, trying to figure out what Solidarity was and how that all works into the 3-party coalition that is Solidarity People for Profit. Oh my god, mind-boggling. That's as difficult to understand as some legal legislation. Like, so I got through it in the end, and that's where we are now. And then, of course, if you're doing a podcast about young people in politics in Ireland, you can't just, leave out 6 counties, which play a huge role in the landscape of Irish politics. And that's to completely not even mention the absolute love and admiration and the interest I hold for Northern Ireland history and Northern Ireland's politics. It was something I was 100% wanting to get on board with for a second season. So I was like, I'm going to do this, and it'll give me a chance to interview Rise and the Socialist Party. And so then I was up in Belfast meeting a friend, and one of his friends happened to be in the SDLP, and I kind of briefly mentioned to him, I was like, hey, I might, if it gets to the stage, I might want to do an interview with people in Northern Ireland. And I didn't know how COVID was going to go out and how it was going to keep going, and I thought maybe I might get them in-person interviews. And then he sent me a message 2 weeks after I came back from Belfast. It's like, hey, are you still up for that interview? And I said, I'll put it off for a second because I want to see. I think this was coming to the stage where they were about to take out. No, it definitely wasn't taking out level 5 because we'd gone up to Belfast, so level 5 was not in effect. But there was worries about, I think it was very much that we might be locked in our county. So I put it off, thinking maybe I can get it afterwards. But then I just thought to myself, I might as well do them now. And the best thing to do when you can't leave your home is to interview the people who are furthest away from you that you wouldn't even get to go and see and interview anyways. So with that being said, I interviewed the SDLP, interviewed Alliance, interviewed the DUP, who else did I interview? The UUP. Yeah, so that was that. And then, so I got all the major parties. I think so my bar for Northern Ireland was any party that has an elected seat in the Assembly, and already I had interviewed the Greens and Sinn Féin, so obviously they weren't going to need a second part because there was no point. And plus the person I'd interviewed for Sinn Féin, Samantha, was already from Lisburn, so Northern Irish already. I decided, well, there was one party I've missed out on, that's the Traditional Unionist Voice, but honestly, I tried all avenues trying to get someone for that interview, and I just generally don't think there is someone under 24 in that party. And if there is, please make your name known, and I'd love to do an interview with you. I'm quite fair, I would like to think of my videos. But I'm waffling here now, and I've gone completely off tangent, and I'm just looking, it's 11 minutes in. Oh my god. I really need to learn how to limit the sort of waffle I come out with in these videos. So we'll try and move on anyways. I'm going to go into the questions. First of all, I have 5 questions here. There were a few that I just didn't think were appropriate to put in a video that's going online. And I got 8 questions overall, and out of the 8 questions, only one of them was about the series and the rest were just jokes. But I'm more than happy to answer them anyways. First question we have is from Brian Crehan, and he says, is that Crehan fella single? In brackets, don't tell him I asked this question. Well, I've already said it. I'm not bothered to go back and edit it out. I think he is single. I mean, have you seen him? So I can't put that in. I'm sorry, Brian. I don't mean it. I'm only messing with you, pal. I'm sure Brian is looking for people to slide into his DMs on Twitter, so maybe go and hit him up. I think I'll leave his at on the screen at the moment if you want to. The next question is from Carl Duncan, who I believe is a member of the SDLP, and I got a really nice message off him there a couple of weeks ago. But this is another good question. Will you be doing more interviews with political activists? Really enjoy watching. So first of all, again, thanks a million. It's great to hear that people enjoy watching this stuff. That's the best feeling I get out of these videos, is when somebody tells you how much they're enjoying them. Thankfully, haven't had anyone say these are absolute garbage, get them off the internet. So I'll wait and see how I handle that. To answer your question on interviewing more political activists, 100%. There's a load of people I would love to interview. I actually have a list on my computer of potential people, both young and, just within the political hemisphere, who I really want to talk to. I'm not going to name any names just for the sake of, I've said names before to people that I was going to get an interview with, and this is when I had been very early into the stage of acquiring an interview and they had been in contact with me, and then communication just completely drops on their end, and then we end up getting nothing. And I'm kind of one of those people that, if you're going to be stringing me along for that long, I'm just not going to be bothered if you're not willing to then just come to the interview. This was a case with someone I had arranged an interview before. It got to the stage where I was ringing their PA, being like, hey, I was in contact, and then they had no idea what was going on. The TD hadn't communicated, or the senator hadn't communicated, or whatever hadn't communicated to them. So that interview just ended up not happening, and that was because at the end of the day I was just not willing to take that sort of crap, if that makes any sense. But yeah, 100% want to do interviews with more people. It's more a case of finding the time at the moment. I'm just back in college now, and while everything's online, and in a sense that's been a blessing in disguise, because it means I can do everything from home. So I can do my interviews through Zoom and then just attend a lecture straight afterwards. But we're coming up to assignments time now, and I kind of need to get a bit done. It might be an idea, because at the end of the day, my video making skills don't get me my degree, funnily enough. But no, yeah, definitely will get some done in the future. Hopefully do a few over the Christmas break. Next question is from Alex DC. Do you know the way to San Jose? I'm not 100% not 100% sure, and I wouldn't really want to comment because I've been away so long, I might go wrong. It's really bad. I had to look up the song before I made that comment. Thank you for the question, Alex. Next question from Aquiva Clear. Will you be running for election anytime soon? I hope not. It's never something I've ever envisaged wanting to do. I think everyone goes through that phase if you're interested in politics at one point when you're like 13 or 14, imagining yourself as Taoiseach. If you ask some people now, they probably still haven't grown out of that phase, but I'm not throwing shade. There's no need for this shade. I'm sorry. There's no one targeted at that. I'm just talking rubbish. No, I have no intention of running for elected office. I think as well, from watching the videos or the interviews, you can gauge that there's a lot more talented, amazing individuals who would do a lot better in elective office than I would. I'm very much happy where I am, like being left out of the spotlight for that sort of reason. Next question is from Leona Brady. When is Leona taking over as star of the show? When she remembers to bring her tripod to recordings. No, I'm joking, although that has happened before, and Leona, I'll say it now, you better have your tripod ready for the next podcast we do in person. But don't worry about it, you can just have it ready. It'll probably be mid-2021 at this stage. This is actually a good one, because this is the last question I have anyways lined up, but it's also moves me on nicely as well to all the people I want to thank. So I've kind of touched on it already, but Leona's been an absolute brilliant help to me throughout the entirety of this. Even if it goes to checking over stuff that maybe I'm not happy with, it's always great to get a second pair of eyes on things, especially when you're dealing with something as controversial as politics. I know certainly near to the end of one of the seasons, actually near to the end of both the seasons, there was stuff I wanted to check with her and get a second opinion on, and she's been fantastic throughout, because I feel like a lot of the time I get very emotionally invested into these things, so it's kind of difficult for me to look at it with a almost an objective outlook or an objective viewpoint or even an outsider viewpoint. So Leona's been fantastic in that way, and she's also been very good, as I mentioned before, with video, audio recording, all that stuff. I do the editing, but she is very much the person who hands me the stuff to edit, so she's fantastic in that way, and honestly she should be the star of the show. Well, she is the star of the show, she just doesn't get the recognition she deserves, and she really should do, and that's why I'm mentioning it now. Speaking of thanks, again, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who participated. I have a big long list of names here, and despite my first name being the most difficult to pronounce ever and being an Irish, my Irish is absolutely atrocious, so if I say some of your Irish surnames wrong, I completely apologise, but I'll just go through. So I want to thank Ryan Kelly from the Social Democrats, Dara Adelaide from People Before Profit, Brian Crehan, who we mentioned earlier, from Fianna Fáil, Caitlin Grant from the Labour Party, Luke Corkery from Fine Gael, Evan Pereira, who was a member of the Greens, no longer at the moment, Dara Tully from Aon-Thu, Samantha Nicyovi from Sinn Féin, Jack Patton from the SDLP, Ty Nolan from the Socialist Party, Matthew Bell from the UUP, Owen Tennyson from the APNI or Alliance Party, Kieran McAvoy from Rise, and Johnny Mearns from the DUP. So big thanks to all them for taking the time out and putting themselves out there, first of all, in the political sphere. I really I have a very bad track record with interviewing Greens. They always tend to leave the party after I interviewed them. Even the most recent interview, myself and Micheál Odhrán, I hope I said his surname right, after we did the interview with 5 of the Greens, that including the current chair and then the former chair of the Queer Greens, they both left. So maybe I'm the bad luck charm. Maybe I convince people to drop out of the Green Party. But no, I'm only messing. They've obviously, that's a very big commitment to leave a party, so very much something I would hope I'm not in the position of doing. Let's talk. So yeah, I've gone through the thanks. Is there anyone else I need to thank? I hope I haven't left out anyone. If I have, feel free to go off on me in the comments below. But no, yeah, just reading out all those names again, it's absolutely mind-boggling to me, like the amount of fantastic young voices I've met in the last 10 months, I think it is now. It's mad to think of it like that. But they've been absolutely fantastic, and I don't think there's not been a single interview where I haven't come out and thought that was an interesting conversation, and I may not have agreed with everything they said, but I think it gives a good outlook to anyone who's thinking of joining that party. And that's the main reason I started it all, was because I really wanted people to have that, introduction to a party before committing to it. And that was something I always thought about back when I was in first year in college, about joining a party. I was like, I don't know much about these, and I ended up joining a party that I just later found out wasn't for me, and I ended up leaving. But I hope these videos, in a sense, give people an insight into what a party believes in, what a party is, what a party is about. It's the same thing, really. But really, I want people to come away from these videos knowing, at least in a small sense, whether they think this party is for them or not. And I've gotten a few messages off people who have said that they've joined parties because of the videos, and that's honestly one of the most amazing things to hear off people, because it's all well and good and doing the editing, putting the video up, feeling some sense of satisfaction like that, but once it impacts someone's choice on who they decide to join or who they decide to align with, I think that's the most rewarding thing you can get as I'm not going to say political commentator, because I think I'm just a person who talks a load of rubbish to other people who somehow, for some reason, listen. But no, that's pretty much why I started. It was just to give people a good insight to a party, and it certainly doesn't cover it all. I'm not saying that, because at least with a lot of the parties, especially the bigger ones as well, there's very much a complete, they have their own political compasses within that political compass. So you could go into in Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil, or I would imagine the DUP or even Sinn Féin, and there'd be people at odds in those parties, and even in the smaller ones as well, but more so in the big ones. And you can look at the interview with Luke in Fine Gael or the interview with Brian in Fianna Fáil and think, oh yeah, that's a party I get on board with, and then meet someone in the party who has a completely different outlook. So it's very much a base beginner set. I would recommend everyone still looks into the parties before joining into them. My God, 22 minutes. I really do ramble on. I'm going to finish it up now soon. I just want to talk about a few small bits next. It's really what's next for the channel. As I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of doing assignments now, so there won't be as many uploads as possible. That's even part of the reason why I decided to make this video quite informal and just pretty much me just talking. I do want to continue on the 404 podcast. That's the one I did there most recently, and it's had two guests so far, those being Emily Larkin, who's the Diversity, Inclusion and Engagement Officer for Young Fine Gael, and also the founder of Invisible Disability Ireland. And then I had Duncan Smith TD, who's a Labour Party TD for Fine Gael, on there recently, and I think those interviews went really well. And I would, if you haven't seen them, of course I'm going to shamelessly plug my own content, but if you haven't seen them, give them a look yourself. They'll probably be at the end title card at the end of this video, or down in the comments below, or in the comments in the description. In regards to young people in politics, there's still a load of stuff to be done with it. There's still so many more things I could do with it. Youth politics is certainly not confined to the borders of the island of Ireland. There's so many countries out there with so many youth voices and so many different perspectives that I think it would be criminal not to explore that aspect at some point in the future, whether it's in the near or distant future. I don't know. I think I'll try and work my way slowly out of Ireland, maybe go to the UK, Wales, Scotland. Who knows? Then I'll have to start getting either translators or just start learning languages before I do new seasons. The other thing then is the two more short-term questions I want to ask with this, the young people in politics, and I think they won't be seasons as such. They'll be more sort of documentary style content, and I'm sure I'll put them on Spotify as well, because the good thing with this sort of format of content is it translates very well over to just audio driven content. Two questions I want to ask. One is, why do people leave political parties? And it's something I've obviously dealt with myself, and it's something that I know a lot of people, most notably we see at the moment with the Green Party, have dealt with, having to make that choice to know that a party's not for you, and to leave behind the sort of the work you've put into it, and in some cases you leave behind maybe what's the word I'm looking for? Acquaintance style friends that you make in those parties that you only really meet at party political events. So you kind of have to, it's a question of putting time, commitment, friendship behind party ideology or political ideology or self-ideology, and it's something that you have to think about really carefully. And it's certainly not an easy decision for anyone to make, and it's certainly something I wouldn't wish on anyone. But at the end of the day, you know, it's one of those big choices, like, do you still agree with your party that you're going to stay there and going to try and implement change, or are you going to leave and think, well, there's no hope for this? And that's a very important question, I think, to ask young people, and especially people who have left the party. I think the next question, though, I want to ask specifically young people in politics is, we've looked at every party, or at least all major parties on the island of Ireland. But as we all know, politics in its sense is accessible to anyone. You don't need to join a party, and sometimes parties aren't for people, and I think that's generally the case with myself. But the question then is, you know, why do people who are heavily politically active not join a party? And I think that's something that could really be an interesting topic to delve into, and it's something I will do in the future. Definitely, what's the term I'm looking for? Definitely not something that I would waste the opportunity for. And there's a few people in my head who I have in mind, and I have a list down already, and I'm already working on it in the background. So you can look forward to that in the future. Oh my god, 26 minutes. I'm gonna have to wrap it up now, because I've taken up, if you've listened for this long, fair play to you. I wouldn't listen to myself for this long. Sorry. But again, I just want to say, if you're listening, especially if you've made it to this part of the video, it's more than likely that you've either already seen the majority of episodes, if not all of them, in the Young People in Politics series, or you're going to go watch them now. And it's a little emotional to talk about, really, because I am so humbled by the messages, the appreciation, the love I've gotten off so many people for this series, and it's something that has very much gotten me through the entire pandemic, is knowing that there are people out there who share their love for knowing more, for listening to other people, for enjoying political youth content in a world that really doesn't value a youth voice as much as it should. And that was why I asked one of the questions all the time is, do you think politicians are listening to young people? And there's a very much a different scenario, but I think everyone on the consensus agreed that it could be better. And I think in order to make it accessible to people, you need to be able to first hear those youth voices. And I'm just happy in a sense that, and I know I shouldn't really be too proud of work. I think that maybe comes across as a bit of a, oh god, I can't think of any other word apart from braggadocious, and I absolutely despise that word. But I think it comes across a little bit as, egotistical, but I'm just I have some sense of pride in myself for putting together this series along with Leona and everyone else who's agreed to sit down with me and put it out there and give people that option to watch it and give that voice to people who maybe didn't have it beforehand. And while my audience is certainly not huge, it's those videos still in the future will get traction, even if it's not, in the hundreds of thousands. It could be a view a day, or it could be a view a month. People will still see it, and people will still hopefully come away with something from those videos. So yeah, to everyone who's watched, to everyone who's commented, to everyone who's sent me private messages, to everyone who's liked a post on either Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you are what keeps the channel going. You are what keeps me going. I'm just so incredibly humbled, as I said before, to have such amazing people both sit down and talk to me, to follow my content, to really be actively engaged in youth politics, and for that I can only say thank you. And I think I'm going to leave it there. So more to come in the future. Thanks for watching.